So this is the perfect crowd for this this presentation was made for this exact type of group. Can I start? All right. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming. I'm going to speak about, I gave this presentation a slightly different version earlier today at ECC. This is about the need for wild experimentation in public goods. And everyone that's here today this is highly relevant to you. So, just to say, I'm Sky. I've been contributing to DAOs for the last 6 or 7 years. These are some of the communities that I've hung out in and hang out in now. There's one very new one on there that you might recognize if you know. If you are here, you probably already think that public goods are very important, and you also think that, I learned this from Griff, that they're underfunded. And I've gotten into public goods mainly because of the people in the space in Web3. I was always into DAOs, but I've learned from the people that have been dedicating themselves to public goods. Chances are, if it's something cool in the world that's important and it's underfunded, it's probably a public good. You also, everyone here probably loves DAOs, thinks that DAOs are going to change the world. It's the future of coordination, and we all love DAOs, right? However, in the last couple of years, we have kind of learned about some DAOs not working that well, learning the death of DAOs, letting DAOs wither away, let capital and people come up with new ideas. More recently, it's like, well, why has that been happening? I've been thinking about how DAOs make decisions, and it's pretty easy and apparent that most DAOs make quite average decisions. And it's not the DAO's problem, it's not the future of coordination's problem, it's basically math and science. The question is why. You've seen this. This is a famous meme. It exists on crypto Twitter all the time, also on Farcaster. This is a bell curve, and it's a normal distribution bell curve, right? This is mathematics. It turns out that democratic voting tends to make average decisions due to a combination of factors inherent in the process of aggregating diverse opinions and preferences within a large group. That is just something that happens. This is the least interesting part of the presentation, but you probably all kind of realize that DAOs make average decisions. This is actually some of the reasons why. These are 7 reasons, and they are all very similar. You'll see majority rule, most votes wins. In a big population, middle ground wins, edge positions are thrown out. Diverse preferences in a big group. There's so many different ideas, and when you have to make a compromise that reflects what the group's going to decide, it's generally always in the middle. Median voter theorem is an actual theorem that if you can figure out the median voter in that community, like that's probably the thing that's going to pass. Compromise and consensus, we've all learned in DAOs and communities and orgs, you need to make compromises, you need to negotiate, you need to, there's something you want to do, but you have to give that up to get something else. And so once everything compromises and negotiates, you get to the same middle. Avoidance of extremes. These systems, democratic voting systems, are designed to throw out crazy extreme ideas. It's just how they're designed. Information aggregation, representation. So delegates in DAOs, they're representing people who have delegated to them. They generally want to please most of their delegates. They make decisions based on that. That ends up being also, again, an average preference. And so in summary, same thing I said in the beginning. You end up in the middle, basically. And so what do we do about this? The term that I'm using is retarget. There's actually a handful of things you can do. You can actually not do democratic majority rule voting. There's a whole set of ideologies around this, but if we're going to keep doing that type of voting, retargeting is the best thing that I've come up with that can address this. And then actually I think we have some proof that it can work. And so in the normal distribution, this is where most DAOs sit. They sit and they make the decisions in the middle. This is just for the reasons I previously mentioned. And I'm here to say it's okay to hang out on the edges. You don't have to hang out in the middle. But this space is made up of amazing thinkers, the smartest people in the world. They have great ideas that live on the edges. And you put them in these DAOs and they sit in this system that dumbs those ideas and moves them all to the middle. Even the great thinkers like end up, their ideas get whittled away and we end up in the middle. So if you shift the purpose or mission of that DAO away from the middle ground and the actual understood focus and retargeted focus, I'd say, of that group of people is to live out on the edge, you then have this bell curve that exists, but that bell curve is reshifted to live on the edge. And so you'll have some ideas within that space, but the majority of them will still be able to live on the edges. And so I asked the question, what if there was a group of values-aligned people and orgs coordinating around a retargeted focal point, in this case specifically in the public goods space, but this can be applied to any organization or company, I think. And so this gets a little bit into the history of a DAO, where about 20 months ago, a group of organizations, aligned organizations and people in that space, this is Metacartel, Gitcoin, Panvala, Radical, Moloch DAO, Optimism, and CLR Fund, and other people from other aligned orgs as well. They just didn't get heads in the first group. With the help of Isaac Patka, our dev, one of the devs in the space, we launched Public Nouns DAO on September 29th, 2022. This is the first, I was hoping Joshua would be here. This was the first public noun that was auctioned off. We can get, I don't want to get into what Nouns DAO was, but we took the idea of Nouns DAO, which had this massive amount of money, this mechanism, and we specifically applied it to the public goods, funding experiments in the public goods space. At that point, Nouns DAO and other noun-like DAOs were saying, we proliferate the meme of nouns. And if you ask Nouns DAO now, they actually say they fund public goods. I like to think that Public Nouns DAO helped clarify that and drive them in that direction. And so this DAO launched with this retargeted focus of funding, now I like to say wild experiments in the public goods space, but something that's not being funded by, there are many mechanisms like Gitcoin, Giveth, other grants programs. The way that QF was kind of working is it's kind of democratic. It ends up funding, it can fund things on the edge, but it generally the most money probably goes to the ones that are more in the middle, even though it allows for some funding to go to. But QF alone, QF, I think mathematically also, because of the way the matching works, like the more people, the more matching, it tends to push towards the middle again. And so over the last 20 months, Public Nouns DAO has raised over 200 ETH. I think we've given out in grants about half of that so far from auctions. So if there's this idea in the space that's public goods related, that's underfunded, and is a wild idea, chances are Public Nouns DAO has some reason to have a connection to that. It kind of sits in the middle of that, and is a great organization to bounce that idea off of and potentially get funding from. And my favorite part about Public Nouns DAO is when you create this type of retargeted org, these look like a bunch of public noun holders, but the people behind, this is like the first 40 or so public noun holders, the people behind these public nouns are actually some of the most unique, most well-minded public goods and experimental thinkers in the space. And they started hanging out in this community, and they're able to hang out on the edges be in this community. around that time, Bored Apes was blowing up. People were spending 100 ETH on Bored Apes. Someone asked Vitalik about it or something, and then there was this article that he hates what's happening, and then he tweets this: "I don't hate apes. I just want them to fund public goods." So I like to think that Public Nouns DAO actually is an NFT DAO that actually is created with a desire of Vitalik in mind, something that he would really enjoy and like that it exists. And yeah, not made for Vitalik, but it fits what he was desired. The community currently exists of 248 public nouns in existence. Some of those are held by some DAOs. Some are actually held by Nouns DAO. Some are held by Public Nouns DAO. Some are held by some sub-DAOs that people have created to hold public nouns. There's 139 different wallets holding these. You will find that most people are public in Public Nouns DAO. You can see their ENSs. You can see who they are. You can actually, I've done some like POAP analysis and other org analysis. This is the orgs that public noun holders like work on. Some of the orgs actually. You'll see some very notable ones there in the public good space. Here's a whole more. This is a little old because it's a handful of months old too. So even more than this. And so that's all great. We created this retargeted DAO that's able to exist in this on the edges. And so its goal is to fund wild experiments in the public good space. And so like, well, what are some of those experiments? I'll go through just a handful. This is not all of them, but it's a very wide range. And this was a very new thing. So there wasn't much criteria from the start of what things to fund. So it was kind of a spattering from the beginning with some learnings from that though. So I'll go through these quickly, but this is like a public goods focused art exhibit that took place at the Capitol in Denver, the capital of Colorado in Denver, during 4-month period around ETH Denver. This is a project, Blocks Garden, to make all of Ethereum green from the start, which is a great idea. It's fizzled. It didn't accomplish what it wanted to. I would love to see this rebooted. You know, that takes time and attention from maybe the people that created it, but it's a really cool idea that needed funding, that public nouns could actually participate in. We funded some events and some residencies that needed help to make happen. The interesting thing about DAO Palace was the origins of Public Nouns DAO actually comes from DAO Palace 2022, was where it was incubated and pushed along from earlier ideas, and so it was an acknowledgement of that environment that allowed itself to come into existence. So it was able to give back to another version of that. Upe is an example of a very localized public goods focused crowdsourcing hyperlocal information. And the cool thing about that, and I like to think about these as exponential things, and there's another one with Giveth, but by giving a grant to Upe, they're building this system that is creating a template that anyone in the world can use, but also a bunch of the money that is being granted to Upe is actually getting re-granted to the projects in the communities of Upe, so they're doing their own experiments. So by funding one experiment, we're actually funding many experiments below that, and that can create a template that is replicable all around. Giveth is another really great example because of the fact that we're helping with the QF funding, but Giveth as a whole basically has done so many unique state-of-the-art experiments in the public good space that some people think of it just as the giving platform or some QF rounds, but like just alone, like one of the realest versions of decentralized coordination, like of the projects that are on Giveth. It is a token registry basically that is curated by the crowd of the Giveth holders. That is way underused in the space. And so there's a subscription model, there's other things, there's the whole economics of the Give token, getting paid to give, so all these things are new experiments. So by funding and supporting Giveth, we are also funding all of those additional experiments, which again is the multiplication effect, which is amazing. I and others, big fan of privacy. Shutter Network, Shutter DAO now. There's some news coming out this week. Keep an eye out for alpha here. Okay, we already have quadratic funding, streaming quadratic funding, the first one ever, made by GeoWeb team. Come up with an idea to set a new Guinness Book of World Records to plant the most trees in a 24-hour period ever by our very own public noun holder, Jimmy, here in the front row. That's a wild experiment in the public goods space. That is what should get funded by an organization that lives on the edges. You'll see on his shirt, there's a few orgs that actually think also like Public Nouns, which is great because some of these are like DeFi projects and dev shops. And the fact that they're also helping to fund that is like an awesome sign for the space, I think. Yeah, and hopefully the most trees planted in the world in a day ever is the next one, right? That would be amazing. Hyperactive public goods funding, because everyone knows public good funding, but you didn't know all these other versions and additions and experiments in the public goods funding thing exist. So this is a cycle and then a team that's actually supporting everyone that's using it. And last but not least, as a final example, taking PGF funding for an Ethereum Mexico event coming up in September, adding Ethereum attestations, hypercerts, and MACI, privacy voting, as an experiment. See how that performs at Ethereum Mexico. Hopefully, I'd like to go there. So we all know evaluation in DAOs is a really important thing that we need to get better at. When you live in the middle of the curve, evaluation is less important, I think, because everyone kind of agreed, let's try this, let's fund this. When you're doing stuff on the edge of the curve, I think evaluation matters even more, because without the evaluation, these wild ideas, whether they failed, whether they did well, the feedback on that is way more important than something that's already been agreed, because there's going to be controversy when you're funding these edgy ideas. Public Nouns has made an effort to start using the Karma Gap platform to track the grants, get feedback, get loops in. Some projects have done an amazing job of giving the feedback into those grants. My favorite part about Karma Gap is anyone in the world can go on there, look at the grant, look at what's been delivered, look at the results, and actually give a rating system and also like feedback. So anyone in the world, so that could be spammers, that could be public noun holders, that could be Giveth token holders, and then you can filter like, oh, this is what public noun holders think about this, or this is what Give token holders think about this. So you can actually filter it. So it's open and permissionless, but yet filterable, which is pretty cool. So yeah, keep getting better at evaluation. And without the purpose of this or the desire of this, when you have a community of people like this that are amazing, you find that projects in the space have this desire to get them involved and actually reward them sometimes. And so Regen token, recent Regen token, which is turning degens into regions, it's all over Farcaster. They're rewarding public noun holder community with more, Regen points and also more Regen token, because they recognize the value of that ecosystem and getting those people deeper into their ecosystem. There's other things like important public goods that will exist. TKN is one that I'm working with that is basically decentralized CoinGecko. Why are we relying on the CoinGecko API when we can have an on-chain registry of all tokens and the information we need? And that's a DAO that's governing that. The TKN token DAO is governing that ecosystem. You'll start hearing more about it probably because it's going to be an important public good. And that governance token is being airdropped to certain communities, including public noun holders. And so you become an important governor in this ecosystem that's an important public good. So I'm winding down as my final recommendation. I think all, or at least most organizations in the Web3 space, but also we see in the Web2 and in the world space, like Google even had things like Google X, Moonshot Factory. If you realize the traditional org, the democratic voting org can't make these decisions, can't fund these ideas, and those ideas kind of just die, every org should dedicate either manpower, capital, or time, or some other version of capital towards this retargeted focus that lives out on the edges. It's okay to hang out there, just like in the DAO world. It's okay to hang out in the cracks. It's okay to hang out on the edges as well. If you look on publicnouns.wtf right now, there is a live CLR fund bubblehead public noun on auction. If you like this community, pick one up, join the community. We also have money to give out as grants. And so bring ideas, come to the Discord, bring ideas, bring proposals. We want to fund these experiments. Thank you to everyone here that is in the Public Nouns community. And thank you for coming to this talk. You can join the Discord, or you can pick up a public noun.
Thank you.